Hey guys, tonight we journey back in time to the rich, rhythmic heart of West Africa, Yorubaland. You find yourself surrounded by the low murmur of distant talking drums, each beat rolling gently through warm, thick air. Somewhere nearby, smoke rises from a clay hut. The sun? Earthy, tangy, unmistakably fermented. You've landed in the middle of a Yoruba village in the 14th century. And someone is brewing beer. You don't know the exact word for it yet, but this isn't your average pint. It's pito, a lightly fizzy, slightly sour, and deeply beloved sorghum beer crafted almost entirely by women, fermented under palm leaves, and always shared with the spirits before it reaches your lips. This world is slow, measured, gentle. But make no mistake, you probably wouldn't survive a day here. The sun is unfiltered. The fermented stuff is strong. And if you drink too fast, someone's grandma will definitely give you side-eye. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with where you're watching from and the time. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease in tonight's journey together. You begin walking barefoot, because of course, and the red earth sticks gently to your solace. It's just before sunset. A golden haze rests over the village, softening the angular thatched roofs and casting long shadows that play tricks on your eyes. You're not lost exactly. More like floating forward, tugged by a drumbeat far off in the trees. The path widens. A small child with bright beads in her hair skips past you, balancing a calabash of something suspiciously foamy. Her feet barely make a sound. In contrast, a goat you didn't notice until just now makes a low, unimpressed noise, possibly judging. Your outfit. You pass by clusters of huts. Smoke curls up from cook fires. Somewhere, a rooster is making questionable time choices, crowing despite the late hour. The smell of roasted yam and spicy okra stew rides the air. You're definitely getting hungry, but you're also getting closer to that beer dot, and not just the drink itself. The story of it. The hum of life that surrounds its making. You're stepping into a tradition that has outlasted kingdoms, survived colonizers, and adjusted gently to modern chaos. The Yoruba, an ancient and resilient people, brewed more than just alcohol. They brewed memory, ceremony, and social glue all. In one round, gourd-shaped sip dot, as you round the bend, you hear it. A low, thudding rhythm. Not music exactly, language. The talking drum dun-dun. Tucked under the arm and played with a curved stick, it mimics human speech. And yes, it's saying something. You just don't know what, yet. But it feels like it's for you. Or maybe about you. The drummer, an older man in faded indigo, is seated under a raffia canopy. His hands are steady. His smile, teasing. It's as if he knows you're from somewhere else, far away, a time traveler trying not to ruin the vibe. He taps out a rhythm that says, loosely translated, stranger walks like a goat in rain. You sit on a rock that's smoother than you expected. Warm, sun-baked. The village begins to wrap up its day, women returning from market with woven baskets on their heads. Children gathering firewood, old men settling into low conversations about nothing and everything. One reaches over to nudge a calabash toward you, pito. You nod politely, because declining isn't really an option. You take a sip. It's warm, tangy, slightly sweet at the end. It's not bad. It's not beer like you know it, but it carries a depth, a patience, a sort of fermented calm. Nearby, someone begins humming. A brewing song, perhaps. A lullaby for yeast. You can't tell. The language floats over your head, but the tone wraps around you like a cotton cloth. Historians still argue whether pito was first developed independently in multiple West African regions, or spread gradually through trade and migration. What's less debated is its central role in Yoruba communal life, linking people across generations and villages, served at weddings, funerals, naming ceremonies, and idle Tuesday afternoons. You close your eyes for a moment and let it all settle. The warmth in your belly, the beat of the drum, the lazy breeze carrying scents of earth, smoke, and fermentation. A woman sits beside you. Her wrapper is green and gold, her hands stained slightly from roasted grains. She smiles and points to the beer, then gestures to the drummer. "He talks too much," she says with a chuckle, "but he plays sweet when we brew." You nod, even, though you're still trying to figure out how exactly a drum can say, "Beer is ready, bring your calabash." You'll find out soon enough. But for now, you just breathe. Deeply. Slowly. You're not really in a rush. After all, the night is young, the drums are patient, and the pito still has more to teach. The path from your sun-warmed rock to the village market is short, but it winds gently like the riverbed that feeds the crops nearby. You follow it with that sleepy, low-energy shuffle that comes after your first sip of pito, the kind of movement best done when there's no real schedule to keep. Which, lucky for you, there isn't. The market is already starting to thin. Most of the louder bargaining is over, replaced by soft conversations and the occasional giggle from two women comparing the size of their cassava roots. You pass between makeshift stalls shaded by wide-leafed palms. There are calabashes of palm oil stacked like mellow pumpkins, bundles of dried pepper, and twine-tied leaves meant for medicine or at least strong-tasting tea. Someone calls to you from behind a pile of clay pots. "You've not tasted our yam paste yet." The seller insists, like this is a scandal. You wave and promise to come back, which is a lie, but a polite one. Here, in 14th century Yorubaland, the market isn't just for goods, it's for gossip. And as it turns out, beer talk travels fast. One woman whispers about a batch that turned sour overnight, possibly due to a cursed calabash. Another nods solemnly, clearly more concerned about the calabash's owner than the beer. The drums aren't far, but here they're faint, like distant thunder. Still, they echo slightly off the clay walls and woven mat awnings, wrapping themselves around your walk like a rhythm trying to stay relevant. And it does. Because here, even trade dances to a beat. You pass a stall selling small wooden carvings, miniature, drummers, fat-bellied ancestors, and yes, one cheeky figurine holding a tiny calabash. You pick it up. The merchant grins. "That one always gets the best brew," he says, deadpan. Historians still argue whether Yoruba market layouts followed any consistent plan or grew more organically based on terrain and trade needs. But one thing they agree on, beer always found its place. Usually right near the entrance, because people wanted to toast to their luck or drown their bargaining regrets before heading home. A group of older women sit on stools, their feet dusty, their expressions unbothered by time. They talk without stopping their hands, which twist fibers into rope or sort dried maize. Every few minutes, someone reaches down and sips from a shared calabash. You're starting to realize that pito is less of a drink and more of a background. Character in every conversation. One of the women, eyes lined with laugh wrinkles, motions you over. You obey, obviously. She pats the stool beside her. "You want to know who makes the best pito," she says, not as a question. You nod, prepared for a lively debate. Instead, she cackles and waves toward a cluster of distant huts. Follow. The smell of burnt clay and yam skins. That's where the magic happens. As you thank her and rise, she adds one last thing. And don't step on the cat. It bites visitors. Right. Noted. You drift toward the edge of the market, where the colorful fabrics give way to more practical items. Wood, pots, grain sacks, and the odd tool whose purpose you cannot quite guess. The sun is lower now, painting the world in a burnt orange that makes even goat droppings look sort of poetic. Past the final stall, you spot a young man tapping on a small drum strapped across his chest. He's practicing something, a rhythm with too many stops and sudden flicks, like he's trying to trip up the wind. He sees you watching and raises an eyebrow. Trying to say something? You ask. He grins. Trying to say I'm better than my brother. He plays like he's half asleep. Maybe he was just drinking pito. Then he has an excuse. He shrugs. But not a good one. The air is thick now, not with heat, but with the promise of evening. Cooking fires spark to life. Voices. Lower. Even the goats seem more contemplative. And you, ever the curious traveler, continue your walk toward those mysterious huts and the magic of burnt clay and yam skins. The village transitions softly as you go, no sudden boundary, just a slow shift from commerce to home life. You step past a small shrine where someone's left flowers and half a calabash of beer for the ancestors. It's customary, you remember, not superstition, just courtesy. You spot your first proper beer jug, tall, curved, and with tiny patterned carvings near the rim. It rests beside a wide bowl filled with soaked grains, their scent sour-sweet in the most calming way possible. If sleep had a flavor, this might be it. You're getting close. A child runs past with a woven fan and a big smile. Behind him, a small dog half-heartedly gives chase before realizing it has better things to do, like lie in the dust and snore. Near one of the huts, a woman sings. Her voice is low, repetitive, melodic, like a chant or lullaby meant for yeast. It might actually be. You're not sure, but you don't dare interrupt. Instead, you sit nearby, close enough to smell the fire smoke and watch as the rhythms of market life soften into something quieter, more intimate. The beer is still bubbling somewhere. The drums, though faint, haven't stopped talking, and you're starting to understand the language, even if you don't know the words. Yet. You wake up, though you were never quite asleep. Maybe drifted is a better word. The ground under you is warm, the air laced with the thick smell of cooked grain, and the distant drums now sound like the heartbeat of the village, steady, patient, and, oddly, just a little smug, like they know something you don't. You stretch your legs and glance around. A new set of faces now moves between the huts. Women mostly strong, barefoot, and focused. They carry things with the calm confidence of those who've done it since they were old enough to stand. Calabashes, earthen pots, baskets woven tight with split palm fronds. And you realize this is the brewing crew. You shuffle a little closer to the open air, structure where the real action's happening. There's no formal sign, no carved "The Old Brewery" hanging above the door, just the unmistakable scent of fermentation, smoke, and roasted sorghum. One of the women, she wears a wrapper patterned in cobalt and ochre, glances up at you. There's amusement in her eyes. You come to watch or to help? Mostly watch, you admit. She snorts, not unkindly. Then sit. But don't. Block the breeze. You obey, perching on a low wooden stool just out of range of the bubbling pot. The process isn't rushed. Brewing here is deliberate, rhythmic, almost like drumming. First, soaked sorghum is laid out in the sun to sprout. This turns the starch into sugar. You eye a drying mat where the grains look suspiciously like tiny sleeping worms. But don't worry, they're not. Just friendly future beer. Next comes roasting. Two women tend to wide, shallow pans over open fire, stirring the sprouted grains until they darken and pop. The smell is hard to explain, nutty, a little burnt, a little sweet, like popcorn left in the microwave just slightly too long, but somehow still appetizing. One of them adds dried bitter leaf for extra tang. The other sprinkles a mysterious powder that, when asked, she simply calls what my grandmother used. You wisely stop asking. Historians still argue, says the woman in the cobalt wrapper, whether it was sorghum or millet we started with. Depends who you ask. My people say sorghum. My cousin's husband's people say millet. She stirs the pot with a wooden paddle taller than you are. Either way, we made it better. You nod. There's really no counter-argument to that, Dodd, as the roasted grains cool. They're crushed by hand, stone, or sometimes a big wooden pestle with more battle scars than a warrior's shield. Then comes the mixing. Water, crushed grain, and a faintian and a touch of last week's batch to kickstart the fermentation. A little old magic mixed into the new dot, and throughout it all, there is talk. Stories bounce from brewer to brewer. Someone's niece is courting a boy with an excellent yam farm. Someone else's husband tripped over a goat and landed in the washing bowl. A third woman shares news from a neighboring village. Their pito is watery this season. A collective gasp follows. Clearly, standards must be maintained. Between the jokes and stirring, one woman sings softly. You don't catch the words, but the others join in by the third verse. It becomes a brewing anthem, the kind of song that tells the grains what to do and reminds everyone when to add firewood. You shift on your stool. A young girl approaches with a carved ladle and offers you a sample. It's not finished, just halfway fermented, but you taste it anyway. Warm, tangy, still frothy on the tongue. There's something delightfully unfinished about it, like drinking. A promise. She waits, arms crossed. It's okay, right? You nod. Tastes like ... the beginning of a good story. She grins. That's what pito is. In the corner, an older woman with salt gray braids carefully checks the fermentation pots. She doesn't speak much. She doesn't need to. Everyone watches her cues. The tilt of her head, the brief pause of her hand on the lid, the slight purse of her lips when the bubbling's too quick. You learn wordlessly that she's the one who decides when a batch is ready. You also suspect she could make or break a wedding with a single eyebrow raise. A rooster struts dangerously close to the fire. Nobody stops him. Perhaps he too has opinions on beer. You lose track of time, lulled by the smells, the movement, the constant, quiet work. Brewing here isn't just about alcohol, it's about rhythm. You realize it's a kind of inheritance, passed matrilineally. Not just ingredients or tools, but gestures, stories, cautionary tales about over-fermenting. And of course, the precise way to swirl the paddle so spirits don't get offended. Oh yes, one woman says, catching your thought before you voice it. We always brew with spirits in mind. Spiritual, like prayers? No, she says, glancing toward a gnarled tree where someone's left a small wooden bowl. Like spirits, ancestors, the ones who drank before us, they still come. You. Look again at the steaming pots, the careful hands, the almost ritual quality of the process. Yeah. You believe her. In the distance, the drums change their tune. A new rhythm, playful and staccato, skips along the tree line. Someone chuckles. They're gossiping, the cobalt-wrapped brewer says. Drums always do when the beer smells strong. You close your eyes and listen. The rhythm rises full of syllables and syllables pretending to be beats. You can't quite decipher the message, but you feel it in your bones. This isn't just brewing. It's brewing with audience, with dialogue, with ghosts, with gossiping drums. And tomorrow, the village will taste the result. The smell changes first. It's subtle, like the difference between morning air and dusk wind, but it's there. A deeper, more complex aroma begins to creep from the brewing hut. Less raw grain, more warm fermentation. It's a little tangy. like overripe fruit that somehow still knows what it's doing. You lift your head, slowly, as if obeying the scent. Around you, the brewers stir with practiced grace, eyes half-lidded in the kind of trance you only reach when you've done something thousands of times. You get the sense they could stir with their eyes closed and still get the proportions right. They probably have. This is where the magic settles in the moment when the grain and water mixture, once humble and confused, begins to bloom into beer. The paddles slice lazily through the mixture, pulling steam upward in visible threads. It curls around the women's arms like ghosts coming to check on things. You're not entirely sure they aren't. You shift your gaze to the pots themselves. Massive clay vessels, some cracked and lovingly patched with resin, others smooth, and nearly black from years of fire. They sit nestled in fire pits or tucked under reed shelters, depending on what phase of the process they're in. One particularly regal pot even has beads hanging from its rim. You assume that's the VIP vat. As you watch, one of the younger women, probably an apprentice, carefully places a woven lid over a pot and mutters a few words. Nothing dramatic, just a whisper. But you sense again that this is not simply a matter of keeping bugs out. It's etiquette. Spirits don't like their beer startled. Now we wait, someone murmurs. Wait? You're excellent at waiting, especially when it comes with a side of low drumming, cooling air, and a rhythm of life that makes everything feel like it's running. Exactly on time, even though nobody owns a watch. You stretch your legs out in the dust and let your back rest against a tree stump. Nearby, a toddler totters past carrying a ladle roughly half his height. He's followed at a respectful distance by an extremely tired chicken. Your mind starts to wander. Historians still argue whether the fermentation knowledge here came independently, or was influenced by ancient Nubian brewing practices where pottery-based beer making also flourished. But the Yoruba method is so tailored, so local, and so deeply communal, it's hard not to believe it emerged right here, shaped by soil, spirit, and stubborn grandmothers. Back then, says an older brewer, as if hearing your thoughts, we used to test the beer by watching the bubbles. Big ones mean impatient spirits. Little ones mean they're pleased. You nod solemnly, pretending you've totally done that before. As twilight deepens, someone lights a few oil lamps. Their flickering glow dances along the pots and illuminates the brewers' faces with a golden softness. It makes their wrinkles look like topographic maps of wisdom, and possibly sarcasm. One woman leans toward you conspiratorially. Once we had a batch that foamed up so high, it reached the rafters. Really? She shrugs. Turned out someone put sweet yam in it. Spirits love yam. You make a mental note. If you ever brew your own pito, bribe the spirits with root vegetables. Across the way, another brewer is gently tapping her pot, not forcefully, just rhythmically, like she's giving it a pep talk. Or maybe syncing it with a distant drum line, which is now slow and pulsing, like a lullaby played on stretched leather. Someone begins humming again. Same song as before, but softer now. Almost like a secret being passed down. You catch snatches of the tune, the lilting phrasing, the way it seems to blend perfectly with the bubbling beer. They're not just brewing. They're layering sound into the process. Atmosphere, memory, comfort. The pito, it seems, is steeped not just in sorghum, but in lullabies and rhythm and repetition. One brewer catches you listening. You don't stir without a song, she says. Else it ferments angry. Angry? She nods, matter of fact. Gives everyone hiccups. You take another mental note. Now, the resting pots emit soft popping noises, tiny lazy burps as gas builds and slips free. It sounds a bit like a cat settling down in warm blankets. The brewers begin to tidy up their stations, putting lids on things. tossing spent grain to a nearby goat who seems to have been waiting all day for this exact moment. The young apprentice wipes her hands on her wrapper and sits down next to you with a huff. "Tomorrow morning it'll be ready," she says. "What happens then?" She grins. "We taste. We argue. We celebrate. Or we pretend it's fine and give it to the uncles first." Fair enough. There's an ease in this part of the evening. The hard work's done. Now it's all about letting time and yeast do their thing. There's a strange sense of trust in that, trusting nature, trusting tradition, trusting that the spirits didn't take the night off. Someone brings out a fermentation. Small drum, not a talking one, but a gentle hand drum. They play a slow rhythm while others talk in hushed tones. You sit among them like you've always belonged. This isn't the dramatic part of the process. No wild celebrations. No overflowing pots, just calm fermentation under the stars. But it might be the most magical phase of all, because here, in this stillness, the beer is learning who it is. Morning sneaks into the village not with a blaring alarm or fanfare, but with a slow lifting of the shadows and a polite rooster who sounds slightly less confused than last night. You stir from your place under the tree stump, stretching out your arms as the faint scent of dew and wood smoke enters your nose. And then there it is, that tangy, fermented scent. Stronger now, deeper. The kind of smell that says, "Congratulations, you made it to beer day." You shuffle over, sleepy-footed, to the brewing hut. The pots are right where you left them, but something feels different. Maybe it's the tiny bubbles drifting to the surface of the liquid, or the way the brewers are gathered in a loose semicircle, arms crossed, giving the pots the look you might give a cake to see if it's truly risen. The older woman with the salt gray braids nods slowly. It's time. You suddenly feel very honored and also very unqualified. There's no grand ceremony, no trumpet fanfare, just a ladle, a few eager calabashes, and a line of grinning aunties who've clearly been waiting for this moment since yesterday. The first scoop is poured. A cloudy, golden brown liquid with the consistency of warm soup and the smell of toasted dreams. One of the brewers hands it to you. "Careful," she says. "It bites back if you're rude." You take a sip. It's tart, a little fizzy, earthy, in the way that good bread is earthy. The flavors twist on your tongue, first sour, then nutty, with a hint of smoky sweetness at the end. It's really good, but more than that, it's alive. You feel it waking something up inside you. Not energy exactly, more like calm confidence. Like you suddenly understand how to grow yams, raise goats, and recite 300-year-old stories by moonlight. You exhale slowly and nod. The women watch your face closely. When you smile, they all erupt into laughter. "He likes it," says one. "That means we did something right." A new pot is uncorked and calabash are passed around like party favors. Everyone sips and smacks their lips thoughtfully. The commentary begins. "This one's a little too quiet." Someone says, "Add more roasted grain next time," says another, "or fewer blessings," mutters a third, and everyone laughs. The taste test isn't just about flavor, it's an evaluation of balance, of technique, of spiritual alignment. The tiniest variations are noticed, noted, and teased mercilessly, but never cruelly. You realize this is what quality control looks like in a world where taste is the result of rhythm, mood, weather, and grandmotherly secrets. Historians still argue whether pito functioned as a ceremonial beverage first, or if it evolved from everyday village drink into sacred staple. But honestly, here, it doesn't seem to matter. The taste test has both vibes, something everyday, something eternal. You watch as an older man wanders over, scratching his beard. "Beer?" he asks hopefully. "Only if you don't complain about it like last time," a woman fires back. "I never complain. You said it made your dreams too spicy." Well, he says, they were. She hands him a calabash anyway. He sits, sips, and nods sagely. Ah, this one's got confidence. Nearby, children are given tiny sips more out of ceremony than thirst. One boy takes his seriously, swirls it in his mouth, then declares, "It tastes like a wise yam." Everyone laughs. The name sticks. That pot is now Wise Yam Brewed. As the tasting continues, a rhythm picks up not from drums, but from footsteps. The sound of people arriving, catching wind of beer and wanting a share. No one is turned away. This is community beer, after all. One batch becomes the center of laughter, storytelling, and the very first steps of a barefoot dance, someone begins clapping. Not hurriedly, just a slow, steady rhythm. Soon, others join. It's not long before a real drum joins in. You recognize the talking drum from before, but this time it's less gossipy and more celebratory. The brewer in the cobalt wrapper waves at you. Hear that? That's the "it didn't go bad" beat. Is that an official rhythm? She grins. Very. Used only when the beer doesn't embarrass us. The beat is simple, predictable, comforting. You sway with it instinctively. Even the goats seem to bop along. The beer, warm in your stomach, seems to amplify the feeling that you belong here, even if just for now. Someone hands you a roasted yam, split and steaming. It's dusted with spices and pairs perfectly with the pito's tang. You eat slowly, savoring the contrast. And just as you finish the last bite, the old woman with the braided hair pats your shoulder. Now you've tasted it right. You lean back against the brewing hut wall, full and relaxed, watching as the village slowly turns a beer tasting into a full-on mini festival. Children run in circles. Grandparents trade jokes. Couples stand close under the trees, whispering. You're not just witnessing the pito's power, you're feeling it. This isn't beer as escapism. It's beer as connection. As a gentle thread linking people across time, across tables, across pots and drums and awkward first sips. And through it all, the scent of toasted grain still lingers in the air, subtle but persistent. Like a friendly reminder that another batch is always coming. It's late morning now, but the breeze has cooled just enough to make the heat bearable. You wander a little away from the main gathering, calabash still in hand, drawn by the rhythm that's grown sharper. Clearer dash closer. Just past the edge of the brew hut cluster lies a grove. Slender trees arch gently overhead, offering flickering shade like someone's draped gauze between you and the sky. The talking drums live here. Or at least, the drummers who make them speak. There's no formality. No sign, just a low wooden platform beneath a wide-leaf tree where a man sits cross-legged with a drum tucked beneath one arm. His eyes are half-lidded, fingers resting lazily on the taut drumhead as if he's waiting for your curiosity to arrive. You approach slowly, trying not to seem too obviously enchanted. He looks up and gives you a look that falls somewhere between finally and try to keep up. You hear it yet? He asks. Hear what? He taps one soft, then again sharper. Then a pause. Then two quick beats, a longer one, and a subtle bend of pitch that seems to tug at something behind your ears. Not just rhythm, speech. That, he says, is me saying, "Why did you take so long?" You blink. Seriously? He nods. You've got ears. Use them. He gestures to the drum. It's not huge, maybe the size of a large cantaloupe, but its voice is powerful. The hourglass-shaped body is strung with tension cords, and the leather is worn soft at the edges. This isn't just an instrument. It's a tongue, a memory, a gossip columnist. He pats the spot beside him, and you sit, carefully. Talking drums, he begins, don't just mimic words. They expand them. Yoruba is a tonal language. So when we speak, we're already singing, even if we don't realize it. He demonstrates, saying a short sentence in a quiet voice, then repeating the tones on the drum. The pitch rises and falls. Like a melody line, each beat stretching to fit the nuance. Historians still argue whether drum communication like this originated purely for ritual or from practical needs messaging, trade, alarms. But we know this, it speaks, and it listens. You glance around the grove. More drummers have arrived now. A boy no older than 10 practices near a tree stump, mimicking patterns he's probably heard since infancy. His hands fumble a little, but the rhythm is there, hiding beneath his nervous fingers. Another older drummer calls to him, not in words, but in beats. The boy laughs, then calls back with a slightly cheeky rhythm that could definitely be translated as, "Mind your own drum." The man beside you chuckles. They're talking about pito. Pito? You raise your brow. He nods. The batch. You tasted? It's good. Word's gotten around. He demonstrates again a series of beats, followed by a long sliding note. It's playful, cheerful. The beer's ready. Come quickly. Bring your own calabash. And maybe your best gossip. You listen. More closely now, not just to the drums, but to what's between the beats. The silence that holds the shape of meaning. You start to sense the rhythm of community, of unspoken agreement. The way a single drum can call someone from half a mile away, or announce a birth, or summon help, or declare that someone's pito batch is tragically weak. They use this just for beer news? You ask. He grins. For everything. But beer's the most important. You tilt your head. Does everyone understand the messages? No, he says. Only the people meant to hear them. The phrase settles over you like the soft fall of an evening blanket. There's something comforting about that. Not everything has to be broadcast to the whole world. Some messages are like sips from a shared cup meant only for those nearby. One of the drummers begins a more complex rhythm. Now fast, layered, with sudden pauses that make your spine tingle. You watch as he smiles to himself. What's he saying? The man beside you listens, then laughs. He's teasing the women. Says their beer's so strong, even the ancestors are tipsy. You snort softly. Is that allowed? Of course, he says. As long as the spirits laugh too. Nearby, 2 women from the brew hut arrive, hands on hips. They don't speak, but one of them taps a rhythm on the side of a wooden bowl in response. The drummers whoop and shift their tune apology beats, light and cheerful. The women, satisfied, leave with a smirk. It's a whole soap opera. In percussion. And you? You just sit there, calabash in hand, soaking in the gentle chaos of it. The drums continue, shifting tone and tempo like a language evolving mid-sentence. Some messages are clear. Some are meant to be puzzles. But all of them dance around your ears like warm wind. One of the younger drummers breaks into a familiar rhythm, the same beat you heard yesterday near the market. You turn to your new friend. That one. What does it mean? He raises an eyebrow. That one? That one says, stranger walks like a goat in rain. You groan. They're still talking about me? He shrugs. The drums don't forget, but there's affection in the rhythm now. A kind of musical teasing that says, you've stayed long enough to be included. You raise your calabash and mock toast toward the grove. The nearest drummer gives you a dramatic nod, then taps a quick sequence you don't understand, but you suspect might mean cheers. And as the sun climbs higher and the drums continue to chatter, you realize that here in this grove, communication is more than just talking. It's drumming, it's fermenting. It's listening to what bubbles, what beats, and what rises slowly through clay pots and stretched skin. The sun crests its noon arc as you wander slowly back toward the village center, the faint pulse of the drums following you like an old friend whispering jokes at your back. The energy in the air has shifted again, no longer the quiet diligence of morning brewing or the calm testing of fermented dreams. Now it's something else. Celebration, maybe, or preparation for it. You pass a cluster of children dragging thin palm fronds through the dust, giggling as they form twisting patterns, probably for no reason beyond the pleasure of movement. One of them pauses, eyes your calabash, and says, with a grin, "You miss the dancers." The what now? A woman sweeping near her doorstep overhears and waves you toward the village clearing. You're just in time. Go. Before they start spilling pito on each other. You don't need to be told twice. The clearing is buzzing with a casual kind of excitement. People mill around with the relaxed urgency of a festival that hasn't officially begun, but absolutely already has. Women carry trays of fried plantains, roasted yams, and bowls of pepper stew so vibrant it could wake the ancestors. A few men sip slowly from calabashes, carefully trying to look like they're not already tipsy. The drums are louder here, layered, complex, with multiple tones riding over one another like water rushing over stones. They're being played now by a full group, each drummer lost in their own loop and yet impossibly in sync. And then the dancers arrive. You hear them first. Not their feet, those are quiet, but their bells. Woven around their ankles and wrists, tiny brass chimes jingle, softly with every move. The group, mostly women, enters the circle with slow, deliberate steps, arms lifted just enough to let the sun catch the beads on their wrists. You take a sip of pito, letting it settle behind your tongue, and lean against the nearest tree. This is the kind of show that asks nothing of you except your gaze and maybe a second helping. The lead dancer, a tall woman wrapped in deep crimson, her hair piled high with gold-tipped pins, steps forward and lifts a calabash to the sky. She tips it slowly, letting a stream of beer splash onto the ground. An offering to the ancestors. Someone murmurs beside you. You nod as if you always knew that was the custom. Because now you do. The music shifts faster now, sharper, and the dancers begin to move in earnest. It's not wild or chaotic. It's precise, even in its joy. Shoulders roll, hips shift, knees bend and stretch in movements that seem both casual and impossibly deliberate. You catch glimpses of mirrored gestures, one dancer spinning left, another right, like a reflection caught in moving water. Each move tells a story, your neighbor whispers. They're dancing the brewing. What do you mean? He leans. Close. That spin, that's the stirring. And that lean? He tilts his body to the side. That's watching the pot, waiting, listening. You smile. So this is interpretive fermentation. He laughs. Something like that. Historians still argue whether such brewing dances were formalized rituals or spontaneous village traditions passed through mimicry. But here, in this moment, it's clear they're both. Structured, yet fluid. Ancestral, yet alive. Suddenly, one of the dancers breaks from the group and pulls a small child into the circle. The boy freezes for a moment, caught between delight and panic, then mirrors her movement perfectly, a shoulder roll, a quick step, a clap. The crowd cheers. The dance widens. Others join in, not professionals, just people carried by rhythm and memory and possibly a little too much pito. An elderly man with knees made of mystery starts a shuffle step that somehow becomes the crowd favorite. A group of teens joins him, copying his every move like he's the founding member of the Beer Step Society. The lead drummer changes tempo again. A call and response begins not with words, but with rhythm. Drums speak. Feet answer. Bells chime. Like polite applause. Someone thrusts a fresh calabash into your hands. Drink, then dance, or at least try. You laugh nervously and take a sip. The beer has mellowed, now still sour, but smoother, as if it has settled into itself. You wonder if you've done the same dot, and then you do it. You step into the edge of the circle. You don't dance exactly, you sway. You let your shoulders bounce gently with the beat. You find a rhythm not quite your own, but generously loaned by those around you that no one laughs. In fact, a young girl mirrors your movement and nods in approval. You've passed the vibe check. From the center, the lead dancer catches your eye and lifts her calabash in salute. You raise yours back, the beer sloshing slightly but heroically. For a moment, you're not an observer anymore. You're part of the ceremony, the storytelling, the celebration. The dance doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be shared. As the sun slips toward afternoon, the rhythm softens. The dancer's slow, spinning gently, arms lowered. The final. Bow is subtle, a tilt of the chin, a shift of weight. The drums ease into a murmur. And just like that, the dance is done. The crowd claps, not with wild cheers, but with contented smiles. The kind of applause you give not to a performer, but to a familiar song that played exactly the way you remembered it. You exhale deeply, letting the last note settle around you like dust. The pito warms your stomach. The drumming still echoes, faintly in your chest. And the dance? The dance stays in your bones. By now, you've learned the drill. The pace of the day isn't something you command, it carries you like a leaf on warm water. After the dance fades and people slowly drift back to shady spots and stew pots, you follow a quiet trail leading. Out of the clearing, drawn by the scent of roasted yam and the low murmur of laughter. A few elders are seated on carved stools beneath a fig tree, sipping pito from wide calabashes and debating the important matters of the world. Namely, how much spice should go into groundnut stew, and whether or not yesterday's pito batch was better than today's. You hover awkwardly at the edge of their circle. One of the elders, a man with deep lines and the world's slowest blinking speed, raises a calabash and nods. You look thirsty. You're not really, but that's never the point. You accept the calabash and take a long sip. This pito is stronger, earthier, darker, almost smoky. It hits differently. This one tells you secrets. Made with roasted sorghum, the elder says, sensing your silent reaction. Let it sit a little longer. Adds weight to your dreams. You don't ask what kind of dreams. Instead, you glance down at the plate of food being passed around. Slices of grilled yam topped with a pepper paste, so red it might be illegal in some countries. Someone offers you a piece. You bite in carefully and instantly understand why the pito is necessary. The spice delivers a slow burn, but the beer chases it away like a breeze through hot coals. This, says the elder, gesturing between the food and drink, is the correct way to taste it. You don't drink pito by itself, you give it company. The others nod sagely, then immediately begin teasing each other again. You talk like you invented the calabash, says one woman, elbowing him. Maybe I did, he replies. No one remembers who made the first one, so it might as well be me. You lean back against the tree, soothed by the rhythm of banter. The occasional chime of ankle bells still drifting in from the clearing. Everything feels soft. Even the sunlight, filtering through fig leaves, looks drowsy. Someone hands you another calabash. It's slightly cooler than the last, which surprises you. You sip again. This one's fizzy, younger, maybe unfinished, but still delicious. That's mid-ferment, the elder explains. Tastes like it's in a hurry. Like a boy trying to grow a beard before his voice changes. The table bursts into laughter. You nearly spit your sip. Historians still argue whether the different fermentation stages were traditionally used for different occasions, light pito for daily meals, deeper brews for ceremonies, but here, the answer is simple. Drink what feels right. Let the beer match the moment. Another elder leans in toward you, voice dropping conspiratorially. Let me tell you how not to drink pito. You wait, intrigued. Do not, he says slowly. Let your in-laws serve it first. Everyone chuckles. You tilt your head. Why? Because, he says, if it's too strong, they think you're weak. If it's too weak, they think you're insulting them. And if you ask for more before they offer, they'll say your family has no manners. You nod gravely. So basically, you can't win. He grins. Exactly. That's why you marry someone who already knows your drinking face. More laughter, more sips. Someone pulls out a small drum not for talking now, just idle tapping. It keeps the time like a metronome of leisure. You glance around. There's a rhythm to everything here, even the way people eat. Small bites, long silences, stories stretching across 3 calabashes. You'd be lying if you said you weren't adjusting to it. You can already feel your modern instincts fading, your need to check invisible watches or make clever remarks. Slowing like yeast in cold weather. One of the women leans toward you. So, what do you taste? You blink? Taste? In the pito. You pause. Let it sit in your mouth for a moment. You close your eyes just slightly. Earth, you say, and smoke. And something that tastes like time. She nods approvingly. You're ready for the good pot. Someone disappears into a hut and returns with a smaller, older vessel. It's different dark clay, etched with lines worn smooth. The pito inside is richer, almost chewy in flavor, like it's been waiting for this exact moment to be noticed. You take a sip and feel it settle in your chest. Like a warm stone placed just right. This is the one the ancestors drink first. Even the chatter softens. Everyone sips more slowly. Now, the jokes continue, but softer, woven between stretches of quiet like patches of cloth sewn into a story quilt. And then, as if summoned, someone begins humming. Not loud. Just a thread of sound, old and frayed and perfect. You don't know the words. You don't need to. Because this taste, this yam, this pepper, this beer has already said everything worth saying. Evening begins its descent like a soft sigh, cooling the air and deepening the colors of the village. Shadows stretch long across the red clay, and a faint scent of burning herbs floats from a nearby cooking hearth, mingling with that familiar, comforting tang of ferment. You're seated now beside a small shrine, nothing grand. Just a raised platform of stone under a tree, with tiny bowls arranged in a half circle. Some contain cola nuts, a few hold dried flowers, but most, as you quickly notice, are filled with small sips of pito. One of the women from the brewing circle walks over, hands behind her back, her steps deliberate. She stops next to you, nods toward the shrine. Time to say thank you, she murmurs. You blink. To who? She gives you a look that says you should know better by now. The ancestors. The spirits. The ones who drink first, remember? Ah. Yes, the early tasters. The watchers of bubbles and balance. She kneels, carefully uncorking a small jug of fresh pito. With practiced precision, she pours just a sip into one of the empty bowls, holding it still until the foam settles. They like the top of the batch, she says. The first pour. The head. You nod solemnly, because they're fancy. She smirks, because they're old. You watch her work as more women arrive, each bringing a small offering, dried okra, herbs wrapped in leaves, a sliver of yam fried to a crisp. Nothing extravagant, just gestures. Proof that someone remembered. Someone cared. The woman motions for you to pour your own. You kneel beside her, carefully tilting your calabash to release a few drops into the last empty bowl. The beer hits the stone with a soft splash. You expect the world to hold its breath. It doesn't, but something inside you does. There's a stillness now. Not silence, but stillness, the kind that settles in just before dusk fully falls. It wraps around you like cotton, muffling the noise of the day. Even the insects seem to hush. Do they answer? You ask, not sure if you're allowed. They always answer, she says, just not in words. You sit with that thought. For a long moment, the gentle drumming in the distance has returned softer now, like lullabies whispered into clay jars. You realize this shrine isn't for performance. It's for peace. For keeping things in balance. Historians still argue whether these offerings originated from ancestral worship or broader West African spiritual systems tied to nature deities. But in this moment, it feels deeply personal. Like a family gathering that never really ends, just shifts form across generations. A child skips by, eyes the shrine, and offers a quick bow before racing off again. No prompting. Just habit. A tiny ritual soaked into daily life. You glance at your offering. The foam has disappeared now, absorbed or evaporated. The beer sits still and quiet in the bowl. It looks satisfied. Nearby, one of the elders sets down his own calabash with a patalabash, with a patavadava. Heavy sigh. You know why we always pour for the spirits? He says to no one in particular. Because they're picky, someone replies dryly. He chuckles. No, because they brewed the first batch. They started the dance. We're just following their rhythm. You sip your beer slowly, watching as the sky turns from gold to dusky purple. It's beautiful, the kind of sky that makes you forget to speak. The kind that listens better than most people do. Someone begins to hum again. The same tune from the brew hut. You're starting to suspect it's less of a song and more of a current, something that flows through everyone here, passed down. Like yeast from one batch to the next. As the air cools further, small lanterns are lit around the shrine. The flames flicker gently, casting dancing shadows across the bowls. The shrine no longer looks humble. It looks alive. You catch sight of a tiny clay figure tucked behind the stone, an ancestor perhaps, or a deity. It's hard to tell, but it watches, quietly, like the spirits do. The woman beside you stands and dusts her hands. They've had their sip, she says. Now we can drink in peace. You smile. I thought we were already doing that. She winks. We were, but now it counts. She walks off toward the clearing, where laughter's growing again. Someone's brought out a larger drum, and people are beginning to gather for the night's next round of stories and sips. You sit for a moment longer, letting the shrine and its gentle offerings fade into the background of twilight. In the end, it's not about what the spirits say back. It's about the rhythm of remembering, the pause, the pour. The nod of thanks. You rise slowly, calabash in hand. The night is only just beginning, but already you feel a deep calm, like something inside you has clicked softly into place. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you swear you hear a tiny, whispered cheers. You follow the gentle hum of conversation back toward the heart of the village. The path winds lazily, bordered by glowing lanterns nestled in clay. Holders and flickering fireflies doing their best impression of candlelight. The air smells like wood smoke and warm grain, like a kitchen you never knew you missed. Voices drift from a larger compound up ahead, more formal in tone but still carrying the relaxed cadence of people with full bellies and nowhere urgent to be. You slow your steps and peek around the woven gate, where several elders and attendants sit on carved stools in a semicircle. At the center, beneath a wide awning of palm thatch, is the Abba's court, the local ruler's home. It's not what you expected. There's no golden throne, no diamond-studded cane, no overdramatic declarations. Just a low platform, a pile of soft mats, and a middle-aged man with a quiet smile and a calabash in his hand. He's listening. A woman in patterned blue speaks, gesturing now and then with her own calabash as she describes a recent harvest. Another man leans forward, complaining mildly that his neighbor's goats have developed a taste for his yam leaves. The Abba listens, nods, then says something that earns a wave of laughter from the group. It's clear he's not just a ruler, he's a drinker of community stories. One of the attendants notices you, smiles, and waves you over. No grand introduction. No test of worthiness. Just a quiet invitation to sit and watch how decisions are made over sips of pito. You settle in. The pito here is different, richer, aged, like it's been allowed to think before being served. It carries notes of smoke and palm and something else, a whisper of pepper? You're not sure. But it tastes like trust. The Abba lifts his calabash. Slightly in your direction, a wordless welcome. So, murmurs the man beside you, you've reached the diplomatic brew. You blink. Diplomatic? He chuckles. Every court has one. Pito strong enough to make people honest, smooth enough to keep them polite. You sip again. He's right. Historians still debate whether pito played a direct role in Yoruba diplomacy, or if it simply accompanied the decision-making process as a matter of custom. But you can see now how a shared drink slows things down, eases tension, makes it harder to yell when your lips are gently fizzing with fermented calm. Watch. The man says, nodding toward the group. An argument is forming. Two elders disagree vehemently but not angrily over land boundaries. The tone rises slightly. Arms move. Words tighten. Then, pause. One of them takes a long sip from his calabash, swirls it thoughtfully, and smiles. It is not the land's fault, he says. The other nods, exhales, and says, then let the trees decide. Everyone laughs. The Abba gestures with his calabash, amused. The trees are wise, he says, but slow. Another round is poured. The argument is not dismissed, it's simply redirected, softened by the rhythm of sips and shared heat. You lean back slightly, letting the cadence of the court lull you. The drums in the background have quieted, replaced by low chatter, the occasional clink of calabash to clay, and the fluttering of night birds stirring from the trees. Someone offers you roasted plantain, crispy at the edges and slightly caramelized. It's hot, sweet, and just spicy enough to remind you you're alive. Paired with the pito, it tastes like a treaty. A warm, edible handshake. The Abba's wife enters quietly, her wrapper shimmering with soft gold thread. She pours a new batch of pito from a jug carved with symbols, birds, trees, and what looks suspiciously like a dancing goat. You don't ask. She moves gracefully, pouring for each elder, then hands a calabash to you. This one, she says, has cloves. You take a sip. It's spiced and surprising, with a floral note at the end that lingers like a kind word. They say this blend makes people generous, she adds, smiling. So is this a trap? You tease gently, only if you're stingy. You finish the cup. The discussions continue, topics ranging from market prices to marriage arrangements to a mysterious chicken theft no one seems particularly eager to solve. Through it all, pito flows, not in excess, not in drunken celebration, just enough to keep everything grounded, to remind everyone that their tongues, like their calabashes, should never be too empty or too full. One of the elders, lean and regal, with silver-threaded hair, turns to you suddenly. What would you use pito for? He asks. In your own land? You pause. Think. Maybe. To slow things down, you say, to make conversations last longer. To make people listen. He nods slowly, approvingly. Then you understand. You sit with those words. Let them ferment. Because here in this royal courtyard, among flickering lamps and the scent of roasting maize, you realize that beer isn't just for dancing or tasting or praying. It's for deciding. It's for remembering that. Decisions like good pito take time, patience, and a little fire. The night deepens, slow and warm, like molasses slipping down the inside of a gourd. You make your way from the Abba's court, calabash tucked safely in hand, following a sound that's not quite music, not quite conversation, but somewhere. Gently between the two dots, it's laughter, laced with flirtation, and it leads you to a small, open courtyard lit by flickering torches and the low orange glow of a cooking fire that's clearly long since done its job. Around the edges of the fire sit groups of women and men, not together exactly, but near enough for glances to cross, jokes to land, and stories to meander into romantic territory. You've stumbled into the unofficial beer courtship corner. It's subtle, no serenades, no dramatic flower petals on the ground, just shared glances, tilted calabashes, and the gentle weaving of stories that sound innocent on the surface, but carry deeper invitations just beneath. A young man raises his calabash slightly toward a woman across the fire. You know, he says casually, "This pito is sweet, but not as sweet as that smile." There are groans, playful ones. The woman in question rolls her eyes but doesn't walk away. She takes a slow sip and replies, "Careful. Too much sweet makes the spirits jealous." Touché. You ease down onto a low stool at the edge of the gathering. No one minds. You're part of the village now, at least enough to witness this gentle ritual unfold. Another couple sits closer together, calabashes nearly touching. Their conversation is quieter, murmured. You catch snippets. Something about siblings, yam? Festivals and the color of wrappers at a naming ceremony. Nothing scandalous, but every few words they pause to sip, smile, sip again, and that's the rhythm here. Talk, sip, tease, sip, repeat. A woman near you leans over. "You see that one?" She whispers, nodding toward a couple leaning against the same tree. You nod. They met over pito last festival. He offered her the last cup. "A bold move," you say. "Very," she smirks. "It was her batch," you wince. "Risky," she shrugs. It worked. Historians still argue whether beer-making women in ancient West African societies held informal social power through brewing or formal economic influence. Here, it seems like both. The woman with the best pito isn't just the one with the tastiest brew. She's the one everyone wants to talk to. A young man across the fire begins plucking a thumb piano soft, plinky notes that drift lazily into the night. They don't demand attention, just enhance it. The sound is like a lullaby trying not to be obvious about it. Someone passes you a fried dumpling. You accept it without hesitation. It's warm, just sweet enough, and somehow makes the pito taste spicier in contrast. You sip and glance around. The whole space hums with anticipation, but not the kind that rushes. This is slow courting. Nobody here is swiping right or left. They're swaying gently, emotionally, like reeds in breeze testing the air, leaning a little closer and sipping. One girl stands, calabash in hand, and begins to speak. Not loudly, but clearly. It's a story, or maybe a proverb. It's hard to tell. Everyone quiets down to listen. She once brewed pito so strong, the rooster forgot to crow, she says, pointing to a woman laughing behind her hand. There are gasps of mock horror and cries of "not the rooster." But everyone's smiling, including the woman being teased. The speaker continues. And when her husband tasted it, he said he dreamed in colors he'd never seen before. "Oh," the crowd replies in unison. She bows slightly and takes a slow, theatrical sip, then returns to her seat to a round of delighted murmurs. You lean toward the woman beside you again. "Do people get married here because of pito?" She grins. "Not because of it, but if someone brings you a second calabash without you asking," she makes a face of mock seriousness, "you better be ready." You nod, slowly, sip again, A young couple stands to leave. One is carrying both calabashes. There's no announcement, no hand-holding. But everyone watches them go. The silence says what no words need to dot another match, maybe. Someone calls across the fire. Who's brewing next? A chorus of voices answer, each naming someone different. The teasing begins again. Don't let her use that bitter leaf again. I still can't see straight from her last batch. Tell the spirits we want romance, not revenge. You laugh along, letting the rhythm of the jokes and glances soothe you. There's no pressure here, no performances. Just the quiet hope that maybe the next sip leads to the next laugh. And maybe the next life, you look into your calabash. It's nearly empty, but not quite. You take one last sip, let it linger on your tongue, and feel the warmth trickle down into something that might be your heart. Because here, under the stars, with bells still echoing in the trees and the low hum of song, pito isn't just a drink dot, it's a love language. The stars have gathered above you like quiet witnesses, their soft glow scattering across the dark canopy of night. You leave the courtship circle with your calabash still warm in hand, now less about thirst, more about company. The air carries a lazy coolness now, soft against your skin, the kind that wraps around your shoulders like an old friend's shawl dot as you wander down a narrow path between two rows of quiet huts. Something catches your eye, a flash of motion, the flicker of firelight on polished clay. You step closer, dot, it's a pot, dot, no, wait pots. Dozens of them, arranged in a semicircle like they're in silent conversation. Fat-bellied ones with wide lips, tall slender jugs with textured ridges, even squat little ones that look like they could double as pillows if you were desperate and very sleepy, and they're singing. Not in a literal sense. But each time the breeze moves through this space, there's a tiny hum, a whispery tone that rises from the mouth of the pots. You step closer, trying to figure it out. A woman sitting on a woven mat glances up, amused. They sing better when they're full. You smile. Of pito? Of course, she says. Or rainwater. Or secrets. She pats the mat beside her, and you sit. This is the potmaker's courtyard, she explains, where we shape the things that hold everything else. You take a good look at her hands covered in a fine coating of clay dust, her nails short. Her fingertips cracked but steady. They are the kind of hands that understand patience. She picks up a half-finished vessel and begins, smoothing its side with a gourd scraper. The sound is gentle, rhythmic, soothing. You're immediately sleepy. They say every pot has its own voice, she says. If you make it right, it hums when the pito ferments. You blink. So, it sings back to the brew? She nods. It's a conversation, clay and beer, vessel and spirit. From a corner of the courtyard, another potter grunts. Unless you make them crooked, then they just sulk. The first woman laughs. Yes, well, not everyone listens to the clay. She picks up another pot, this one finished, with a carved rim that echoes the zigzag pattern from a drum you saw earlier. We argue about this, she admits. Some say the pots should match the drums, so the beer and the rhythm are in harmony. Others, she explains, think pots should stand still, quiet, passive. Let the drum do the talking. Historians still argue. Too, she adds with a sideways glance. They debate if these patterns were decorative or functional, if pots carried messages or just beer. You run your fingers lightly along the carvings. They're not just surface deep, they're part of the structure, part of the feel. You imagine wrapping both hands around this pot, lifting it full of warm pito, and hearing it whisper stories while you sip dot. She sees the look on your face and grins. You felt it, didn't you? You nod. You're not the first. Beer listens best when the pot was made with care. Nearby, a boy sits carefully smoothing the neck of a jug. He's quiet, tongue between his teeth in concentration. Every now and then he glances at the older potters, silently mimicking their hand motions. It's like watching someone learn to speak with their palms. Is he training? You ask. She nods. His grandmother was the best potter I knew. She said the clay was her first child. You raise your calabash to that. Sounds like she would have. Made a good drummer too. Oh, she did, the woman says. Until her wrist broke chasing a goat. Ah, yes. The eternal goat drama. Someone else walks into the courtyard, a drummer, carrying a talking drum under one arm. He exchanges a few words with the potters, laughs, and places his drum beside the largest pot. They sit side by side. The pot and the drum. One carved from clay, the other stretched from hide. Both hollow. Both designed to carry something sound. Liquid, meaning. The potter beside you watches this silently, then says, "You know, the first drums may have come from pots." Someone knocked one over, heard the boom, and thought, "Hey, that's useful." You smile. So drums are just pots with ambition? She snorts. Exactly. The pot beside her has just been fired and is cooling, slowly. It emits a soft, cracking sound. Tiny shifts inside as the clay relaxes. She places her hand on it gently, like comforting a friend with a sore back. "You have to listen," she murmurs. Every crack tells you whether it's happy, or if it's going to fall apart in a week. You run a hand across your own calabash. Gourd, not clay. Light, portable. But suddenly you feel a little guilty. Your drink deserves a song, doesn't it? Do you ever keep a pot for yourself? You ask. She shakes her head. No need. Every pot I make, I already know how it sings. You sit quietly with that for a while as the courtyard shifts around you in silence. The other potters clean their hands. The boy finishes his jug. The drum sits still, but you can feel its presence humming beside the pot. Like an old cousin at a family meal. Before you leave, she hands you a small, imperfect pot, thumb-sized, with one crooked swirl along the base. For your next batch, she says with a wink. Even travelers have spirits to thank. You cradle it carefully in your hand. It's warm, like the pito, and you swear it hums. The village has quieted now, not completely, but the laughter has softened, and even the drums have retreated into thoughtful rhythms, like they're scribbling notes in a sleepy journal. You walk with your tiny gifted pot tucked carefully into a cloth sling, its warmth lingering against your palm like the memory of a good dream. Then you notice something different in the air. Not absence, exactly, but hesitation. The way people's voices drop when they cross certain courtyards. How a few paths curve unnaturally wide around particular huts. The conversation shifts subtly. No more jokes. No flirty beats from the drums. Just a hint of caution. Curious. You follow a narrow trail that winds behind the brewer's grove and past a fence of dry, rustling reeds. On the other side, a woman stands alone beside a low fire, carefully untying a bundle of leaves. The scent is instantly familiar. It's sorghum. But this is not your usual batch. She glances up, unsurprised to see you. You're following the smell, she says softly. You nod. Is this pito? Yes, she says. Then, with a dry smile. But not the legal kind. Ah, the midnight brew. She motions for you to sit, but lower than usual. Everything here is quieter, smaller. Even the fire is muffled beneath a ring of stones. Nearby, 2 clay pots bubble with a closed lid. Intensity, no boasting foam, no loud stirring songs. The beer is shy here. We call it gogur in other villages, she explains. But this is pito's secret cousin. You take a cautious sniff. The aroma is potent, sharper than anything you've tried. More fire than foam. More whisper than chatter. This is not the beer of ceremonies or dances. It's the beer of resistance. Historians still argue whether certain brewing Methods emerged purely for flavor or as responses to colonial bans, religious shifts, or political pressure. But in this clearing, the answer is clear. Some brews were born in defiance. There was a time, the woman says, when men from the coast came through and said, "No more beer." Why? You ask, baffled. Too noisy. Too social. 2 hours, she replies. They wanted their own brands, their own taxes. So the brews went underground. Women brewed at night, beneath trees, in small pots tucked into cooking hearths. They whispered fermentation songs instead of singing them. They taught only daughters and only the clever ones. They couldn't stop us, she adds. But they tried. You look at the bubbling pot. And this? This, she says, is a memory. She offers you a ladle. Not a full calabash, just a taste. The liquid is dark and warm, more intense than anything you've had so far. It tingles. Your tongue. Then your throat. Then your ears. For some reason, it tastes like burnt sugar and roasted earth. Like someone dared the spirits to intervene in one. You sit back slowly. Should this even be called pito? You ask. She shrugs. Depends who's listening. Gust of wind rustles the reeds. You notice that her fire is shielded by a 3-sided clay wall smart design. Smoke rises, but only just. No one would see it from the path. You glance around. Do others still brew like this? She nods. Widows, travelers, storytellers, anyone with a reason not to be watched too closely. Another sip. Warmer this. Time. Your body doesn't resist it. Your heart feels. Curious. Ever get caught? You ask. Once, she says. But the man who came to stop me drank a cup before remembering why he was there. You laugh. He said it tasted like his grandmother's wedding, she adds. I told him. Maybe it was. You don't know how much of this story is true. It doesn't matter. The fire crackles. The brew bubbles. And the night seems to lean in a little closer, like it wants to sip too. You stay for a while, saying nothing. Just breathing in the quiet rebellion of sorghum and smoke. The woman ladles another sample into a smaller pot, this one with a lid, and tucks it into the coals. That one's for someone who lost their taste, she says. We're teaching him how to drink again. You nod. With caution? With care, she corrects. Caution is for people who fear. Care is for people who remember. As you stand to leave, she presses a sliver of dried bitter leaf into your palm. For your next batch, she says. To keep it honest, you tuck it beside the tiny pot in your sling. Your secret bundle of bitter memory and fireproof patience. You walk back slowly through the reeds, the wind now thick with scent and silence. When you re-enter the village paths, everything feels louder. The normal pito, the soft drums, even your own thoughts. But somewhere inside you, the quiet batch lingers. And, now pito doesn't always have to shout. Sometimes it hides, and sometimes it survives. The air feels different now, not just cooler, but fuller. Like the whole village has taken a long exhale, and what's left behind is softness. You've been sipping, walking, listening, and letting the world unfold one calabash at a time. The light has faded completely, replaced by the quiet silver of moonshine on clay rooftops. You're back near the brewing circle again, but it's changed. No bubbling pots, no stirring songs. Just a few women reclining on mats, wrapped in woven shawls, their laughter low and familiar. The fire pits are dark now, the ashes glowing faintly. The beer's all been poured. What's left is memory. You sit among them without a word. Someone hands you a calabash. It's not the strongest batch of the day, not by a long shot, but it tastes aged, like something that's taken its time. The perfect last sip before a story. And that's exactly what's about to happen. Do you know, begins one of the women, That pito once kept a village from disappearing? You raise an eyebrow. She grins. There was a drought. She explains. No rain for 3 moons. The ground cracked. Yams shriveled. People whispered that the ancestors were asleep. She pauses to sip, but one old woman kept brewing. Just enough pito for her and the shrine. Everyone said she was mad, said the spirits had already moved on. You nod slowly. But the beer bubbled anyway, she says, even without rain, even with bitter leaf that had gone sour. Every day she poured a little into the bowl at the shrine. Another woman picks up the thread, and on the 7th night, the pot overflowed, without anyone touching it. There was foam, another adds, and dew, someone else whispers, even on the roofs. You don't ask whether it's true. That's beside the point. You glance around at the faces, each softly lit by firelight or moonlight, depending on where they lean. These are not women clinging to folklore. These are keepers of continuity, of brew lines, not bloodlines. People who understand that to pour a drink is to say, we're still here. Historians still debate the modern legacy of pito. In cities like Lagos or Accra, where glass bottles and imported brands fill shop windows, does pito still matter? Is it a relic or a rival? You look down at your calabash imperfect, warm, balanced on your knee like a sleepy cat and think, it matters. Do people still brew like this? You ask. One woman snorts gently. Of course, not always here, but everywhere. Even in the city? Especially in the city, she says, where everyone is too busy to remember their grandmother's voice. You nod, imagining pots. Behind apartment buildings, buckets hidden in kitchens, batches brewed quietly while traffic blares outside. The tradition isn't shrinking, it's shifting. Another woman leans forward, her face serious. In my sister's neighborhood, she says, they brew in plastic tubs now, covered with shower curtains. Not ideal, but it works. Same. Flavor? You ask. She shrugs. Same heart. The laughter returns. Gentle. Knowing. Someone pulls out a tiny drum too small for performance. More like a toy, and begins tapping it idly with one finger. A sleepy rhythm, not a call. Just a heartbeat. Sometimes, a woman murmurs, I think the beer still listens, even in plastic. You sip slowly. The taste is soft now, less sour, more rounded. You imagine a world where this flavor never changed. Where someone somewhere is always stirring, always singing, always pouring a tiny sip into a bowl at the base of a tree. The woman closest to you gestures at your calabash. You'll carry it home? You look down. If I can. Don't bring the beer, she warns, smiling. It goes flat. But bring the waiting, the rhythm, the way it tastes after the second story. You nod, because you know exactly what she means. In the distance, someone coughs. A goat snorts. A pot shifts on its base with a dusty sigh. All of it background music now. One by one, the women lie back on their mats, eyes half closed, faces turned toward the stars. No announcements, no formal good nights. Just a gentle quieting, like the whole village is steeping in its own memory. You stay seated for a while longer, sipping the last of your drink. The flavors changed again, thinner, softer, like it's getting sleepy too. Somewhere beyond the edge of the village, you know, another pot is cooling. Another batch is bubbling. Someone else is telling the same stories in a different order. And the spirits? They're still sipping. The world has gone full quiet, now not silent, but settled. Even the stars seem to breathe more slowly. You rise from your mat with the same care you'd use to lift a full calabash, deliberate, reverent, calm. You walk toward the grove one last time. The drummers are mostly gone now. Just one remains, half asleep beneath a baobab, his drum still tucked under one arm like a faithful dog. He gives you a slow, lopsided grin and taps a short rhythm on the skin. It says nothing and everything. A goodbye, maybe. Or a see you at the next batch. You nod. The path into the trees is soft beneath your feet, cool with evening dew, faintly lit by moonlight that filters through the canopy in strips. You can still smell pito, though no one's brewing now. It's in the soil, the smoke, the memory of things shared. You reach the beer grove, the place where it all began. The first bubbling pots, the clattering ladles, the drummers who gossiped with their hands. Now it's still, but not empty. Ashes sit gently in the fire pits, glowing faintly beneath a layer of white dust. The pots have been moved or covered. The mats are rolled up, but the feeling lingers. Like the spirits haven't left. Like the village knows they never do. You sit one last time. The calabash in your hands is empty now, but you hold it anyway. It's warm from your touch, and the tiny pot gifted to you earlier rests snugly in your sling. You take it out and set it on the earth beside you. It hums, just faintly, as if the earth remembers it. All around, the village sleeps. The air is thick with rest. Somewhere, a child stirs and mutters in their sleep. A bird rustles on a low branch. A drumhead tightens with the cooling air and makes a small, satisfied sound. You close your eyes, just for a moment. You see it again. The women brewing, singing to their yeast. The boys learning drum rhythms that say more than mouths ever could. The pito poured at shrines, for spirits with old appetites. The laughter over yams and marriages and lopsided pots. The dance steps that mimic stirring. The calabash is raised in teasing toasts. The quiet batches brewed in secret, with bitter leaf and borrowed fire. The legacy, marching on not loudly, but firmly, because this isn't a drink that fades. This is a drink that remembers, and as your breath slows, as your body begins to melt gently into the night around you, you feel it settle in your chest. A warmth that isn't just alcohol, or history, or memory. It's belonging. A village of rhythm and care, of humor and heat, of beer that bubbles with stories. The pito is gone now, but the story, it's still brewing. Let your breath fall into rhythm now. Slow. Then slower. Imagine the feel of clay beneath your hands, warm from the sun, dimpled where your fingers shaped it. Picture the pito, bubbling gently in a wide pot. Its scent wrapping around you like a shawl woven from smoke, grain, and quiet laughter. Hear the drumming again, faint now, distant, less a beat and more a memory. A soft tapping like rain on leaves. Like someone knocking gently at a door that no longer needs to open because you're already inside. You sit beneath the trees. Moonlight filters through, painting your arms in silver. The little pot at your side is still warm, still humming, ever so faintly. There's no need to speak. No need to move. You've traveled far, not in distance, but in rhythm. From the first roasted grain to the last shared sip. You've danced, listened, tasted. And now it's time to rest. Let your limbs grow heavier, like calabashes filled to the brim. Let your thoughts slow, like fermentation, finding its pause. The spirits are full, the drums are quiet, and the fire has gone to sleep. So should you.